a wonderful opportunity. I'm actually going to turn my camera off just to save bandwidth for folks, because the most important thing really is the slides and my talk, my voice. And let me just do that first here. Good. If you want to get a good snapshot of me now, Ramesh, I guess this would be a good time. Hello for the website. Okay, I'm going to let me get started here.
Okay, John, I am, I've got everything I need. I've got the snapshot, and you're ready to start.
All right, great. Well, thanks again for this opportunity. My talk is initially titled Online Communities and Virtual Worlds for Patient and Caregiver Self-Help Groups. And I'm kind of wearing two hats here at the same time. I'm the founder of Brain Talk Communities, but I'm also currently community manager at Linden Lab. I think a better title for this would be Frontiers and Pioneers. And I'm going to start off by talking about the concepts of frontiers and pioneers, specifically in healthcare. And a little background about myself. I started working at Massachusetts General Hospital in the early 90s, and I worked in the Department of Neurology, where I was the IT director for the department. And one of my major roles there was to look at how we could use information technology to help us, support our patients better, and to help also improve communication between physicians and patients as well. So at the time, I also was doing some work at Harvard Medical School, where I worked with online education communities and using online communities to help augment the case-based medical education teaching method. And I joined Linden Lab last year. So this is sort of a, I don't know, I like pictures. So what is a frontier? Who are the pioneers? Who are pioneers in general? We've always had frontiers, ranging from things like exploring outer space to westward expansion. That's what the slide on the right is. Actually, you can't really see it that well. There's a wagon train off in the distance. But there's constantly, in the history of humankind, you always see, you see humanity discovering new frontiers to explore. And whenever these frontiers pop up, there are always people who are the initial pioneers, the ones who initially go out there, like the people walking out there behind the wagon train, going out into a strange new world. And what that's saying, the pioneers are always the ones who catch the arrows in their backs. It's always somewhat fraught with a little bit of confusion and sometimes even danger. And what is the online frontier? What are we really talking about here? And I really feel that the internet is fundamentally a frontier of human interaction, which is powered by new communication tools and populated by people who are creating completely new communities that couldn't otherwise exist without this technology. And sort of boiling it down a little bit more, I really feel that the true power of the internet is really manifested when people find other people. And boiling it down even more, I think it's all about the people. Now, the interesting thing when you look in terms of who are the pioneers in healthcare, I really feel that the patients and the caregivers are the true pioneers. They're the most motivated, because they are personally trying to improve their conditions. And since the beginning of the internet, they've really been going online trying to engage in conversations that help them with their healthcare issues, ways to improve their quality of life, ways to share information. And really, when they started exploring, they didn't find healthcare professionals. They really found each other, which is really a beautiful thing to see happening. next slide. That's setting the Wayback Machine to 1993. Let's do that. So this all really started when I was working at Massachusetts General Hospital in the Neurology department. And in the early 90s, I was really interested in what were patients and caregivers already doing on the internet. So I was actually looking at what was going on before the web really started to take off. And back in 1993, I started a project which is now called BrainTalk, and the URL is now braintalk.org. And the fundamental goal was really just to give people tools and a place to share information and emotional support. And I created, initially it started out as a bulletin board system, a little dial-up system. That didn't really take off. And then when the web really started taking off, I wrote some simple scripts to create some basic sort of web-based forums. And I created different areas in these web-based forums organized around specific neurological conditions. And there's over 200. It's continued to grow, and it's up to now, I think it's actually up to about 300 different neurological conditions. So for instance, a small area for people discussing multiple sclerosis or Alzheimer's disease or chronic pain and what have you. And also, including not just, it's obviously a very wide range, so I made a key point to also include what are considered relatively rare neurological conditions, so things like Mobius syndrome, Gaucher disease, communities like that, to give everybody the opportunity to have a place to share experiences. So what you see here is the banner from the website, braintalk.org, and our motto is community and compassion. And so fundamentally, my goal was to have it continually evolve based on user feedback. So when people would ask me, we'd really like a forum to discuss a particular topic, we would create things like that for them. And the interesting thing is, it's constantly, since its inception, been spinning off new communities where patients will get together and sometimes set up their own websites after having met on BrainTalk, which is I think that's a key thing in terms of these online patient support communities, is the fact that as they grow, people find each other, and sometimes they not only want to share information, but they want to maybe start their own organization or start their own website where they can share more information. So that's an interesting thing that I continue to see. And from the very beginning, the goal was to also continue to explore different communication modalities. So as you can see, I had started with the bulletin board system, and also we did some experiments with email lists, and eventually really settled on, as the technology improved over the years, web-based forums for asynchronous communication, different chat rooms of different kinds, and also looking at things like virtual worlds, which I'll talk about more at the rest of the talk. The one thing I've always been trying to do is to find ways to increase the emotional bandwidth of the communication, because I think that's a very key thing. And I was looking for technologies that can allow you to do that. So what happened? What kind of things happen on BrainTalk? What happens is it's a really beautiful, it's a beautiful thing to watch. You see new social networks for support popping up. The first one on this list, I love using this example. This group of folks, all suffering from multiple sclerosis, were constantly meeting in one of the multiple sclerosis chat rooms. And I got an email from one of them at one point, and they said, "Oh, John, you should come and check out our Club Avenex. We meet every Friday at a certain time." And I was like, "Club Avenex? What is it? Like is it a dance club, or what are you guys partying in there?" Well, anyway, one of the treatments for multiple sclerosis is a drug called Avenex, which patients self-inject. And a lot of these multiple sclerosis patients around the world, Many of them are physically isolated. Many of them are homebound, particularly as the conditions worsen over time. And the whole process of injecting this drug is very emotionally difficult for a lot of them. And some of them have a lot of fear. They're afraid that they're going to screw up. They're afraid that it's going to hurt. And so, anyway, a group of MS patients would log into the chat room from around. They were all around the world. They would all log on at the same time, and in the chat room, coordinate their injections so that they were all injecting this drug at the same time. And during the process, they would talk each other through it. Give words of encouragement, answer any questions. Oh, is the needle supposed to look like this? Is it going to hurt? And so it was an amazing way where people around the world could help themselves work through a difficult process, this injection of Avonex. And so this sort of leads to the also the concept of these online worlds, these online communities of patients and caregivers. They really provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week global support. And the key thing is also freedom from isolation. They know they're not alone. They may be the only person in their town who has a particular condition, but they know that there are other people out there in the world. And for things like synchronous bulletin boards, if in the middle of the night they can go online and share their feelings and look at and communicate with other people and make strong interpersonal connections. The other interesting thing that you've seen happen is the rise of patient advocacy groups to actually facilitate medical research. These online communities, the patients are often not just motivated to improve their own condition, but to help, particularly in diseases that are incurable, and that to help facilitate research to find cures for these diseases. So you actually see a lot of patient advocacy groups using these online communities as a way to coordinate efforts. And so, sort of in summary, these new social networks are not really, they're not just online versions of existing social networks. They really, in many ways, are completely novel. And fundamentally, they could not exist without the internet and the tools that you find on there for interaction. I'm taking a drink. Powerade. Must remain hydrated when I talk. So the very interesting thing is, and this is actually a quote from a patient that I talked to a long time ago. You're seeing new roles also for patients and caregivers, and I love this quote. This woman said, "When I talk to my doctor and start asking questions, it's like all these other people are asking questions through me. I mean, I hear myself asking questions that my online family has been asking, and whatever answers I hear from my doctor, I know I'll share them with my friends online, but I can't explain this to my doctor." So, I mean, here's an example of a patient who's actually, she used the term family. I think that's a very important thing to think about. Using these online communities as a way to, interact with her physician and to bring up, find information out that she'll share with these people online. So, fundamentally, I think in some sense the terms patient and caregiver are not completely accurate. We might need a new vocabulary for some of the new roles that these patients and caregivers who are using online communities are doing. I don't know what these terms should be called, patient, caregiver. I'll let other people figure that out. So moving into the area of healthcare professionals and new frontiers. I like this image. Usually, if you're a healthcare professional, when you think of new frontiers, you usually think of something like this, something scary, something ominous. Oh, I don't know if I want to go into that road. It's maybe fraught with danger. Healthcare professionals are fundamentally very conservative, and often for very good reasons. Obviously, they want to make sure that whatever they do has a positive impact on their patients. But sometimes, and I think anyone here who's had any involvement in healthcare with healthcare professionals and the whole healthcare system, it's very slow to change, very wary of using new technologies. So, I think a key thing here is to teach healthcare professionals, or if you are one, to really yourself accept the fact that this online frontier of patient and caregiver self-help exists. First of all, I've actually spoken to, I remember speaking, it's gotten a little better. Physicians are really starting to get it, but, a few years ago, even just a few years ago, many, there's sort of some denial, ignoring the elephant that's in the room. I think a key thing is for healthcare professionals to accept the fact that this online frontier exists and that it's populated by patients and caregivers who are the real pioneers in figuring out how to use online communities for self-help to improve their quality of life and improve the quality of life of other people. Another important thing, and I underline these words because I think they're very key, is for healthcare professionals to really respect the care and support that these online communities give to their members. They really save lives and are incredibly real, even though that they exist just as bits and bytes floating across the internet, and respecting their privacy as well. I think sometimes people don't, healthcare professionals don't realize the power of these spaces, the reality of them, the strength that it gives the patients and caregivers who are participating in them. And lastly, I think healthcare professionals really need to look at exploring these online patient communities and learning about them, and even joining them to participate. Maybe not as an environment for them to directly be giving care to folks, but as a way for them to see what patients are doing. And I think healthcare professionals can learn a lot by a lot of the discussions and topics that are being brought up in these online communities. When I was working at Mass General Hospital, I worked with a couple different neurologists who would actually log into Brain Talk once in a while just to see, for instance, this new drug came out. So I logged on to Brain Talk and looked in the forum, and I noticed people were talking about this side effect that I had never heard about, and I hadn't read in the medical literature. So I started looking into it, and it turned out it was actually something that was real. So as an example, I think is the benefit that healthcare professionals can have in terms of exploring these online communities and learning from the patients and caregivers who use them for support. Now, another interesting thing in terms of these online self-help groups is that the issue of new tools for communicating and interacting. And this is another quote from a different patient. And this one said, I'll first check my email, and then I'll see if there are any new messages in the forums. Then I'll check out the chat rooms and see what people are talking about. I might check my buddy list and try to get my friends in the same room at the same time. And Yahoo voice chat works nice too, especially for people who aren't fast typers. So this is a common thing that I've heard over and over again. People who use these tools, these online communities, they're very open to exploring different tools that could possibly help them connect with other patients and caregivers in more powerful ways. And the fundamental thing is, I think that they're always looking to use new tools and to explore ways that they can use them. So, future worlds. Again, we have the banner from Brain Talk Communities. What I eventually did, Brain Talk Communities, braintalk.org, was one of a number of projects that I was running at Massachusetts General Hospital. And at some point I realized, I really want this to sort of exist on its own and be self-sustaining. So while I was at MGH, I actually, it had originally been running at MGH. The server was sitting on the floor of my office, and using the network and at Mass General. And so what I ended up doing was I created a nonprofit organization called Brain Talk Communities, and through through user donations and also things like using banner ads like Google ads as ways to find new revenue to support it, I was able to move it out of MGH into its own server co-location facility and have it be completely self-sustaining. And also the organization, the nonprofit organization, all of the money that comes into it is spent completely on just funding the hardware and paying for bandwidth issues. Brain Talk actually uses an entire T1 worth of bandwidth, and also for looking at exploring different types of software and so forth. So the organization I run it in my copious spare time, and it's not a job. It's not a job that I'm getting paid for, but it's something that I created because I wanted it to be self-sustaining and have a life of its own and a future of its own. So, and actually, the daily management of Brain Talk is done completely with volunteers. So I have volunteer moderators helping me keep things going, and also some volunteers helping me with some of the technical stuff. So most of what I do, I oversee things, but most of what I do is really just help the community manage itself, which I think is a very key thing. Other things that I experimented with over time, there's a product called the Palace, which is it's kind of like, it wasn't quite 3D. It was kind of like, it was 2D chat. It was graphical. It's kind of like playing with paper dolls on a screen. And there was a group of folks who had multiple sclerosis and who were using this Palace chat room that I had set up. And they were all housebound. They couldn't leave their homes. Their MS had progressed to a point where they were not physically very mobile at all. And they loved using it because they felt that they could actually be in a visual world where they could be moving around in a space, albeit sort of a 2D, 2.5D space, basically. If you Google for the Palace, you can find it's actually the software is still out there. And so it really, that really kind of piqued my interest, and I was very interested in my eternal quest for finding more emotional bandwidth and tools that patients and caregivers could use. And back in 2004, I discovered Second Life. And the three main groups that I've worked with, and this is all part of Brain Talk communities, the three groups I've worked with are people dealing with stroke, with Asperger's syndrome, and cerebral palsy. And basically in 2005, I officially left Mass General, and I work at Linden Lab full time. So since 2005, my full-time job is community manager at Linden Lab, and in my spare time, I continue to run Brain Talk communities and continue to use Brain Talk communities as an organization to do work in Second Life with people dealing with stroke, Asperger's syndrome, and cerebral palsy. So just in case not everybody here, oops, I drank. Just in case everybody here doesn't know what Second Life is, I'm going to go through really quick what Second Life is. Second Life is an online world, an international community of users, and it's persistent, which means it exists always, and people from around the world can log into it at the same time. It's not a game. It's fundamentally a platform. There are games in Second Life, but it's fundamentally a platform where people can create their own environment and customize their own avatar. It's three-dimensional. It's perceptually immersive. And everything in Second Life is completely built and owned by the residents. We don't call them users. We think that's somewhat pejorative. Users. We prefer the term residents. And really, the best fictional analogs are Neil Stephenson's Metaverse from his book Snow Crash, or Werner Ving's other verse from his short novel True Names. If you've read either of those stories, then I can sort of stop talking at this point, because you'll understand what Second Life is. I'm just giving a little bit of background about Second Life. The doors really opened in 2003, and as you can see from the growth, 2004, 2005, 2006, the land mass has grown to 32,000 acres, 180,000 users, and we use a grid computing system so that every 16 acres of land is simulated by a single CPU. So we have a total of about 2 teraflops of CPU power. And those maps are actually, it's a little hard to see, but that's like an aerial view. It's kind of like, think of Google Maps, you're floating overhead. So you see that there are large sort of continent areas, and then there are these little scattered areas which are all individual islands that are floating out in the ocean. And once again, Second Life is a 3D space. You log into it, and our physically in a space that looks very much like the physical world in certain fundamental ways. There's ground, there are oceans, there are clouds. You can walk around. And one interesting thing is, as opposed to conventional, online 3D games, things like World of Warcraft or EverQuest and so forth, the demographics are 43% female, median age 32, and 25% international. So you have demographics that are more, sort of look more like just, average people. It's not all teenage boys in their basements playing this. It's actually much more rounded than that. Now, the key thing about Second Life is that the environment is infinitely malleable, and residents are given the tools to create and shape the simulation of the world. So you see a picture here of upper left of an avatar. I think that's some kind of a gun that he created. And everything that you see there is actually created by the residents. Linden Lab didn't create any of the stuff that you see in these pictures. The eagle down there that can be scripted to swoop out of the air and grab a fish, that was all created by the residents. So, think of the possibilities there when you're given access to a 3D environment where you can basically create anything you really want, as well as customize your own physical presence to your avatar to look however you wish. So the tools for creating all this stuff in Second Life are actually built into the client. So built into the client that you download is a 3D modeling tool. And this is a little picture here of somebody building an interesting looking like a little pagoda type thing. And the tools allow you to create using geometric primitives and linking them and uploading textures and creating these very complex 3D models. It's kind of like building with Legos, but on steroids. You're not just building with tiny little building blocks that are not mutable. You can actually customize them in ways to create completely unique 3D objects. This is an example of you can actually upload textures from your own computer and use those in Second Life. So these are actually people who are, this is a display of someone who has created some textures and is actually selling them to other people in Second Life. But anyone if you create a texture in Photoshop or whatever, bitmap editing software you have, you can upload it into Second Life and then use it on your creations. So we have 3D modeling tools. We have the ability for creating unique textures. And oops, there we go. You also have, did I go back? Okay, sorry about that. You also have the ability to do things like take a streaming video and import it into Second Life and have it playing on a screen or any surface that you want in Second Life. And actually what this photo is of a resident sitting in Second Life watching a live video from Second Life Community Conference that we had in New York City last year. So this person sitting there with the beautiful dragonfly wings is watching a live video and hearing live audio from the conference. The people in Second Life who couldn't attend this conference went into Second Life and watched the video from within the world live. You can actually also do that with, you can also do streaming audio. You can have people, there are actually a lot of people who play, live musicians who play concerts in Second Life and stream audio using like a Shoutcast server into Second Life and give concerts. And they're also logged into Second Life so that they're actually chatting with the residents while they're giving the concert. And so you can think of the power here too in terms of just giving presentations. If you wanted to have a conference and not everyone could physically attend, you could actually tell people around the world to log into Second Life and watch it there. So the last thing here, the important thing, you have the 3D modeling, you have the textures, the ability to use a scripting language to add behavior to objects. So, these aren't just building blocks that just sort of sit there and look pretty. You can actually have these objects have behavior, and these behaviors could be movement, they could be communicating data with other devices. So starting from, you see somebody here creating a simple plywood cube. By taking different geometric primitives and linking them together, you could build a rocket ship that actually flew. You could build a house where the doors are opening and closing, and you could build a bird that flies. So there's a scripting language that is built into the system that allows people to create these complex behaviors. And there's actually a very detailed wiki on the scripting language, so it's pretty easy to get started on it fairly quick. And the thing that really jazzes me, I think, most about something like Second Life is the fact that it really enhances the power for strong emotional connections with people. The emotional bandwidth of actually seeing someone like this woman smiling and clapping is so much more powerful than just typing in a little smiley face in text. It also gives you the ability to think about using real-world social cues and proxemics to enhance the experience of talking with people in a crowd. So you can imagine people sitting around a table or in a room in Second Life where they're clustered into little groups, and someone coming into the space immediately knows who is really sort of hanging out with who because you can see them sitting next to each other. The other powerful thing here is that you can really basically completely create, not merely customize your visual identity. We give people the ability to change their avatar using in-world tools to select things like size and shape and eye color and basic things like that. But there's also the ability to create objects that you attach to your avatar. So why be human? Some people in Second Life have avatars that look like giant birds or robots or anything that they could dream of. And at the same time, some people actually also use Second Life and create avatars that look very much like they do in the physical world. It's really left completely up to the users, to the residents. And also add the ability to add animations and sounds, and you have, your emotional bandwidth really goes through the roof, I think. Another special thing about Second Life is that the residents own all of their own creations in this environment. They retain their intellectual property rights. There's an in-world currency that they can use to exchange for real-world dollars. We have a liquid currency exchange market where buyers are matched up with sellers. So if you have Linden dollars and you want to exchange them for US dollars, you can find somebody who can help you, and vice versa. And residents can license their creations back into the real world as well. So that's another fundamental thing that's different about Second Life. It's a platform where whatever you create is really yours. So there's a strong sense of ownership there. So enough of the background. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's actually happening in Second Life in terms of the patient support groups that I'm working with, as well as other things in general. One thing that's really taken off in Second Life in the past 9 months, really, is the use of it for education. This is a picture of an island. I love that sign. Please don't feed the university students. A bunch of students are using it to teach collaborative architecture, and have created their own virtual campus where they can log in and use it to augment their real-life curriculum. And looking at other educational things, moving toward the healthcare aspect of everything, the ability to use Second Life as an environment for first responder and caregiver training. That's actually me, the avatar. You'll notice it if you saw my picture earlier on the video. My avatar in Second Life, I have an avatar that looks pretty much like I do in the real world, except my avatar is a much better dresser. And this is a simulation that was created by UC Davis for triaging medical supplies in a first responder situation. So you can see they actually created a 3D environment where there's a plane and you move medical supplies. This gives you a level of perceptual immersion that is like nothing else, really. There's another example of teaching process of how to triage in a first responder situation. So here's a little image that somebody put up, probably from a PowerPoint presentation in Second Life, and I'm standing there looking at it. And you can go from looking at the 2D image to actually going to a physical space where you can actually navigate and experiment with learning in an environment where you're immersed in the model. Let me see. Another example of using Second Life for simulation and experience teaching caregivers. This is an area called this little space called virtual hallucinations, where let's go to the next slide here. where it's actually a simulation of what it's like to have a schizophrenic episode. So the auditory aspect of the schizophrenic episode, the voices talking to you. When you go into this environment, you hear the voices. They're localized, so you can experience things like hearing a television talking to you while it's turned off. You can experience things like with schizophrenia, sometimes things will visually change, and there's often a very negative aspect to it. So this model was actually built. This simulation was built based on direct feedback from patients who were suffering from schizophrenia. So if it's seeing things like a poster that's very happy changing to something that says something nasty to you, this virtual hallucination space gives you the ability to immerse yourself in this environment, and the ability to it's one thing to tell somebody what it's like to experience something like a schizophrenic episode, but it's so much more powerful from a learning perspective to actually be able to immerse yourself in an environment where you can perceptually experience it firsthand. So in terms of medical education, I think the application is pretty obvious. And other things like this is actually an area that somebody created to train people on how to identify different types of heart murmurs. So in this case, the person could listen to tapes on a website of different types of heart murmurs, but in this case you have a completely immersive learning where you're walking around in this space and looking at different diagrams and actually little models of patients on the bed. You can click on different parts of the heart and hear different types of heart murmurs in real time, and actually go through and take a little survey and a quiz to see if you actually did it right. And it's funny, I was just talking with resident the other day who is building a three-dimensional heart model that actually pumps that you can interact with, and is going to add it to this space probably in the near future. So another example of going from explanation, looking at sort of conventional 2D images, to actually walking around an environment and having a much more immersive experience where you could actually also assess your knowledge by taking a quiz after you've gone through it to see if you've answered correctly. So coming back to Brain Talk, if you look at the top image is actually a little booth at a fair that I'm going to talk about later that's happening in Second Life, that's focusing on different groups in Second Life providing support and education. And so I set up a little booth in Second Life for Brain Talk communities. And what you're seeing, not only the stuff that I'm working on with Brain Talk, but you're seeing other communities of support coming into Second Life, patients and families and caregivers using this environment. Again, like I said earlier, I think the key thing with online communities is that for patient and caregiver support is that they're constantly looking at new tools they can use. And they're the pioneers. They're the ones that are doing all the incredibly innovative stuff. I mean, even something like with Brain Talk, basically all I ever did was, build like a hotel and let people move in. And then all of the magic that happened was because of the interactions and the work of the patients and the caregivers. Brigadoon is the first thing I did in Second Life with Brain Talk. Brigadoon is an island. It's an environment where people dealing with Asperger's syndrome and high-functioning autism can use a private space to practice their socialization skills in a consequence-free environment, in an environment that they create on their own. So this is a quote from one of the residents of Brigadoon. We're aliens in this real world. Second Life has showed me it's okay to be an alien in a strange new world. I love that quote from Kuz. Kuz created those ships in the background. If you're looking at the image, the Brigadoon Island memorial plaque there. And on Brigadoon Island, people dealing with Asperger's syndrome meet and practice their socialization skills. They have events. They have, there was a concert the other day on Brigadoon where a live musician performed for the group. It's a very small, closed community. It's only about 15 people now, because it has to be for support. It really needs to be particularly for this group. It has to feel like a family where everyone on Brigadoon Island knows everybody else, and they feel very safe there. Asperger's syndrome, in case you don't know. People with Asperger's syndrome have extreme difficulty in interacting in social situations. Things that are inherently obvious to us. Things like how far away should you stand from somebody? Is this person being serious or are they making a joke? People dealing with Asperger's syndrome, they don't have an inherent knowledge of that, and it's very stressful when they're trying to interact with people. At the same time, they can learn by practicing. People with Asperger's syndrome can learn to socialize the same way someone can sort of learn to play the piano through practice and interacting with other people. So Brigadoon, there's another shot here. This is a group of folks on Brigadoon. You can see me second from the left. And, oh, that's a quote from me, that's right. I originally, when I was looking at Second Life, I thought it would be a great way initially to bring people who were dealing with Asperger's syndrome into a simulated environment where they could practice these skills. And again, I just gave them an environment, and with minimal involvement on my part, they've been helping each other. They've been doing things like creating little meeting areas that they feel safe in and sharing them with each other, and building things like gardens where they can meet and sit and chat and working collaboratively on projects. So the support that they're getting from each other is the important thing. It's the critical thing. The other group that I've worked with coming from Brain Talk is a group called Live to Give. This is a group of people dealing with cerebral palsy who were logging into Second Life as a way for them to be free of the limitations of their physical world environment. And I worked with a woman named June Marie Mahay, who in the physical world was working with this group of people dealing with cerebral palsy. And they used Second Life as a way to explore a virtual world and socialize and be free from the physical reality of their situation. And here actually there's an island called Live to Give where these people dealing with cerebral palsy share information about themselves. And this is an individual here who actually wanted to share a real life picture of himself and to let people know this is what I'm dealing with in the physical world on a daily basis. And he did this completely on his own. Some people really want people to understand what their disabilities are in the physical world, and some people don't. It's really their choice. And I love this quote from him: "My virtual self is the voice I always wanted to have, and in many ways allows me to be the person I feel I was born to be." Oh, where is it? Is the slide missing? Oh, there it is. This is an environment that just grew up on its own from residents in Second Life. It's a group called Support for Healing, and they frequently have meetings for depression support. So as you can see here, I'm floating in front of their sign on their island, but behind me you can see these beautiful little gardens, and there's interesting stuff up on the mountain in the background too. So they create this environment where they can meet with each other. And another picture here is just sort of a little meditation area that someone created. And the incense actually burns if you notice little sparks on it. So beautiful immersive environments like this and the key thing to remember is that this is a persistent shared world, so that you're in this environment with other people in real time. So you can be sitting around in a support group environment, talking with each other in a space that makes you feel good about yourself, in a space that you can create completely on your own. This is an example of sort of healthcare professionals. Some people are starting to get it. The American Cancer Society every year runs a Relay for Life, and, where they have people walk around this area in the physical world. And they actually, last year, they used Second Life, and what you're seeing here is actually an aerial view. That whole block of land there is about, I think it's about 16 acres of land there, I'm not sure. But they created a virtual Relay for Life in Second Life. So people who couldn't participate in the physical world participated in this relay, raised money for the American Cancer Society, and had a wonderful shared experience. This is an example. They actually had a little dance party one evening, and people logged in and experienced this amazing community for an extremely good cause, raising funds to find cure for cancer. And this is a statue that was created to commemorate the event. So I love this statue. So this actually still exists. It's still up in Second Life, and is a way to, it's a wonderful way to sort of let people know what happened at the event and to share it with everyone. So the next group I'd like to talk about is Dreams Island. And this is a group that was really started completely, by the initiative of a patient using Second Life. The woman in the image there, her Second Life name is The Sojourner, and she's a stroke survivor. And she created a group for stroke survivors in Second Life and called it Shockproof. And over time, as she got more people around her, she continued to, her vision continued to grow, and she had more people working with her to help her increase her vision. And so what happened was eventually she's moved now to an island called Dreams Island, which is a space for raising awareness about stroke, for support, learning, and also culture. And I think this is just fascinating and just so beautiful. They just opened the island on April 17th, and they have this huge community fair with, fair rides and information booths about different cultural groups in Second Life, and they even have like little hot dog stands and things like that. And it's just such a fun environment, and having live musicians performing. And this is an example of the initial vision of a single woman, a stroke survivor, using Second Life for, as a self-help environment. And she's brought so many wonderful people around her, and is creating this incredible space where people can have fun, where people can, where stroke survivors, particular people maybe dealing with physical mobility issues as a result of stroke, can be free of that in an environment in a three-dimensional world like this. And also to have it as a space where they can, keep their minds sharp. They can be engaged in doing interesting things, and building and communicating with each other, and socializing in ways that they perhaps maybe cannot do in the physical world because of physical limitations. And I like this slide. This is somebody created a clown avatar. They're wearing a T-shirt for this fair, support and learning in Second Life. Having fun while healing. I think that's the key thing too. In the virtual world like Second Life, it's inherently fun. It's like experiencing a waking dream in some sense, where if you can dream it, you can do it. So there's a sense of whimsy and of magic to the whole space that makes it just so much more powerful. So I like this quote. I was at a talk at MIT last week, and John Palfrey, the executive director of the Berkman Center at Harvard, was talking about digital natives, people growing up with these tools for interacting and communicating, growing up with the web, and growing up with blogs, and growing up with MP3s, and the concept of digital natives. And I love this quote of his where he said, "Digital natives are creators and evaluators, not just consumers." The fact that as we move forward and look at using online environments as using their full ability to support patients and caregivers, people are more and more becoming creators, being empowered by the tools that allow them to shape their own world in a variety of ways, whether it be creating their own blog, or creating their own MySpace page, or creating their own world in Second Life. I think that's something to remember as we look toward the future. The future belongs to these digital natives, and they're not interested in just downloading stuff to read. They're interested in connecting with other people and creating their own world around them. And you can't really see me. I'm standing on the bridge. Berkman Center is actually creating a space in Second Life. The photo in the foreground is floating. It's in Second Life, and they're creating a Second Life version of the bridge that crosses the Charles River near Harvard. So they're actually recreating some of the interesting architecture that exists around Harvard. So really, that's really my talk. These are my contact informations here. Contact information. I'm also known as Pathfinder Linen in Second Life. My email address, the Brain Talk website, and Second Life information. If you want more information about education in Second Life, you can go to secondlife.com/education. And there's a link to the Dreams Fair on that tiny URL, information about it and how you can jump right into Second Life and see what's going on. And in summary, I think the important thing is to fundamentally, coming back to the beginning of my talk, the pioneers are the patients and the caregivers, and I think it's really up to us to learn from what they're doing, to empower them to do more on their own as much as possible, and to give them the tools to shape their own world, because the most beautiful solutions to a lot of these issues of support will be created by the people who need it the most themselves. And building the strength of these communities is something that, moving forward, I think is just the most important thing. And that's really, I'm done. I guess I can take questions. I have like 10 minutes for questions. That's not too bad.
Yes. Has anyone got questions? If you have a mic, you could use the microphone, or you could just type your question in the direct messaging window, and we'll try to, get the question to John. John, I have one question for you. I mean, when you were talking about Brain Talk, do you see Brain Talk being bought by a corporation in the near future? I've seen this happening to many online services. And do you think that's a possibility in the future, or whether it's something that you would avoid?
Well, I think I would avoid it. Brain Talk has a life of its own. I mean, it exists. It exists primarily right now as a series of web-based forums. If you go to braintalk.org, you'll see these forums. There are also chat rooms that you can access through the website. There's also stuff going on in Second Life where people who are coming from Brain Talk are also exploring using Second Life as a way for support and so forth. And there are also groups of patients that create their own completely individual communities of support. After having met on Brain Talk. My goal for Brain Talk really is just for it to grow on its own based on what the patients and the caregivers want to do with it. I mean, that's what it's always been. And it's at the point now where it's pretty self-sustainable in terms of being able to have enough money to pay for the server when it breaks and paying for the electricity where it lives and all that type of stuff. It was never started as something that I would think of, even conceive of selling to somebody. And one person told me, what would be your ultimate dream for the future of Brain Talk? And I tell them, my ultimate dream would be for it to close, because all of the diseases have been cured. I mean, that really. If someone asks me, what's your, what would be the ultimate dream for Brain Talk, and it would be really for people to not have to find support groups about these conditions because they've all been cured. So, someday we'll probably get there. I don't know when though.
I have, some. I can't see who was asking, but let me see. Well, there was somebody from KUNC who was asking whether you could make the slides available. So if it's possible, you could just send the slides to me, and I'll just upload it on the website, where you would also find a link to a recording of this talk as well. Okay, now I'm trying to look at the next question from Alexandra. I am a clinical child psychologist in New York City, and I am so intrigued by the applications of this technology. I'm really interested in using virtual reality technology for the treatment of psychiatric disorders like anxiety, for example. This technology could really support the work I'm interested in doing. Are there any psychologists currently using this technology in any capacity?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know of any psychologists using Second Life to do this. I mean, I know that there has been, I remember reading work of psychologists using, you know, 3D simulations to help people dealing with phobias. So, things like fear of heights, fear of spiders and snakes or whatever. So the thing is, Second Life is really a platform, and one of my roles at Linden Lab as a community manager is actually I do a lot of work in the education space, and I work to help educators who are interested in using Second Life for different applications. I help to bring them into the community and introduce them to potential colleagues and collaborators. But most of the time, people just sort of take their ideas and just run with them on their own. And there may very well be a psychologist using Second Life that I just don't know about. There's nothing stopping someone from just going into Second Life and creating their own little space and doing it, and maybe not telling anybody about it. But I think it's a very intriguing idea. I think it's the thing is, with Second Life you can actually have the thing to remember too is that you have the audio component and it's spatialized, so which means you hear things, like if there's a clock ticking to your left in Second Life, you hear it out of your left ear and so forth. You can also do things like put yourself into a completely first-person perspective, so your vision on the screen is looking out of the eyes of your avatar. So I mean that would be a way to completely immerse someone in the space. So I think there's a lot of potential for things like anxiety and other aspects of psychiatric disorders.
Hello, yes, just a comment from a psychiatrist here about the use of these virtual environments. My sense is that moving from a sort of more paternalistic healthcare situation, a lot of healthcare providers, including psychiatrists, physicians, psychologists, may feel somewhat threatened by the idea of patients or clients, as they would call themselves, taking their healthcare information into their own hands. I think that that's one of the things that kept it from really becoming popular more quickly. My question that I had was, if you, just to take a balanced view, and I think this sounds like a really great, empowering possibility, if you've had any experiences with negative consequences, for example, one patient perhaps influencing someone to make the wrong decision in their health care, or even having a dangerous kind of consequence. Hope that's not too long of a question.
No, that's a very good question. In my personal experience with Brain Talk, I haven't seen any any negative consequences. I have seen things like incorrect information floating around, and in things like the forums and so forth. But the key thing to remember is that these are communities, and so nothing goes unchallenged. If somebody writes something and says, "Oh, I found the cure for cancer," eat 20 oranges a day. People will discuss it in detail. And the thing to remember too is that these patients who are online, they have access to, in many situations, the same information that physicians have access to. They can go to PubMed, they can look at medical literature, and there's so much content on the internet that's peer reviewed, that's out there and available to patients. And the other thing is, what I've noticed in these social networks of patients and caregivers, everybody, somebody always knows somebody who has some kind of medical expertise, and so people leverage that. So people will see something, say on a thread in a forum talking about a particular drug side effect, and then someone will post and be like, "Whoa, my cousin is a nurse, and this is completely wrong." So people leverage, people ping everyone that they know in their social network, and what you see is the community itself as a whole is very knowledgeable and can sort of spin into action very quickly. so people can start instant messaging their friends and then sharing the information that they learn online. So I mean, overall, in my experience, we actually did at one point when I was at Mass General, we were looking. I was working with an epilepsy specialist, and we were looking at information that was being shared in the epilepsy support forum on Brain Talk, and we looked for information that we felt was patently wrong, and meaning like, this drug has been recalled, or this drug has this side effect, things that were very quantifiably incorrect medical information. And we never saw an instance where it wasn't at some point refuted by the community overall. And when we asked, we actually asked the people in the community, like, are you bothered by the fact that there could be wrong information floating around here? And they said, well, we take everything with a grain of salt, and we don't. This is something that I've seen not just within that epilepsy community, but overall with groups of patients and caregivers who are in online self-help groups.
We also have one question from Russ, and he says, the IRH has developed a traumatic brain injury virtual program center at idahotbi.vpc.org. It includes a chat feature, forum to post questions, and a calendar feature. This presentation takes this concept much further. What is the cost for someone to access either Second Life or Brain Talk?
Well, first of all, Brain Talk is if you want to go onto Brain Talk and create an account and log into the forums and the chat rooms, that's completely free. It always has been. That was one of the things when I was trying to think of how to make it self-sustainable. The first option that I did not consider whatsoever was having a subscription fee. I wanted to make sure that anyone who wanted to access it could do so freely. To use Second Life, the way Second Life works is the model is very much like the web in that it doesn't cost anything to go into Second Life and be in the environment and use all the tools for content creation and use the scripting language. All of that you can do for free. The only thing that costs money in Second Life is as a resident is if you want to have a space of permanence in the environment, and in that case you have to buy land. So the same way like with the web, if you want to surf the web, it really doesn't, well, aside from your internet service provider fee, it doesn't cost you to look at these different websites unless the particular website has a subscription fee. If you want to run your own website, you have to pay a server hosting fee, and the larger your website, the more bandwidth it uses, the more you pay these hosting services. And so Second Life really works on that model, where if you want to have a space that exists permanently, you have to pay for it, and there's a monthly fee associated with that. And the more land you own, the more the monthly fee is. So, for instance, something like we have discounts at Linden Lab for people doing educators and nonprofit organizations. So, for instance, like the island of Brigadoon, it cost the $1,000 to set up, a one-time fee, and then a recurring fee each month of $150. And that's for a very large space. That's for 16 acres of land. But you could own a much smaller space. And what you could also do is maybe collaborate with someone who already owns space in Second Life. There's a lot of people who share their land in Second Life with other people and work collaboratively on projects. So that's another option you can look into as well.
Okay, I think we are, it's 1:07 here, Mountain Time, and thanks, John, for taking the time to give us this excellent presentation. Well, I am your fan. I've always been your fan, and you want to have the last word?
Last words. Let me see. Oh, I remember reading, I should have added this to the slides. There's an in-world, there's a newspaper in Second Life called the Metaverse Messenger. And there was an article in there recently about a resident in Second Life who is experimenting with using biofeedback devices in Second Life. And let's see, I actually pulled up the article here. He uses a hardware device that measures a person's heart rate and skin conductance, which then actually drives things to happen in Second Life. So he actually can, it mentions how he has an environment where he can sort of sculpt clouds out of color depending on his mood, and as the as he becomes more relaxed, he can create, the colors change on the clouds. So I think that's that's one particular. That's an example of some amazing innovation that is just being done by residents, by users themselves. And there might be some interesting medical applications or something like that for treating people with anxiety, maybe, and maybe helping them practice to relax themselves, and to be able to do it in a three-dimensional world where you're maybe sitting around with a group of other people and you're all trying to help each other in a support group type environment in real time. I think there's amazing power for that. Let me see. I will give you the URL. Let's see here. I'm going to go off the air for the moment, but I'm going to find this for you.
Well, while John is finding with the URL, if you have any more questions, just feel free to to type in your questions, or just use the mic.
There, I just posted the URL. It's actually the issue, April 4th issue, about this resident Komuso Tobukawa and another resident named Carlos Tapioca. I love the names people have. It's the main article on the front page. It's called Art Meets Science with Second Life Experiments. So you can find out all the information you need by downloading that PDF and looking at page 1, basically. And I saw, what was this? Somebody mentioned, yeah, we could have a talk like this in Second Life. We actually could. See, that's the interesting thing. I'm giving a talk here, and I don't have very little visual feedback from folks. I see your names listed there. I recognize a number of the names. I don't know. It's hard for me though to really get a sense of are people interested in what I'm talking about? Are people what are they doing? It would be very interesting to do something like this, have a talk like this in Second Life, where actually people can actually be logged in and have a physical presence. When you add, again, it comes back to the emotional bandwidth thing. When things like forums and chat rooms are wonderful for sharing information, and there's a great deal of bandwidth, emotional bandwidth that happens in them. But moving to environments like three-dimensional spaces, once you're in them, you really get a sense of the perceptual immersion that happens. And in some sense, all of the hubbub over virtual reality devices, back in the, if you remember back in the 90s when everyone was like, oh, we're all going to have headsets and we're going to wear these goggles and have gloves and stuff. In some sense, that stuff never really took off because it's, well, first of all, it's very expensive, and people realize that just using a computer screen as a window and having a very visually rich 3D space just on a computer screen is really enough to really feel a strong emotional connection to a space. I think as human beings, we're very good at suspending disbelief a little bit. You go to a movie and you're watching a movie and you're in the dark and you see it on the screen, and you feel emotionally connected. If it's a good movie, these virtual spaces, these 3D types of spaces, I think just using a computer monitor is really enough. Although in the future, though, I think obviously it'll be interesting to see if there are different ways we can be sort of plugged into all of this as time moves ahead. It's going to be interesting next 10 years, I think. Very interesting.
Great. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone, for coming. And, well, we are done for today. And I'm going to grab my lunch. Okay, bye, everyone.